Hey, welcome to Angle After Dark, and now it is in fact after dark. I made a stream earlier today, and we didn't finish what I had planned, so there was a lot of issues with GitHub. So I'm hoping that, um, I might still avoid making a PR today because it just isn't my day on GitHub. So we'll continue our work with our Angular Elements workspace using Angular CLI and GitHub Actions, and yeah, we actually got uh, this initial workflow working here. So it's supposed to be running on every pull request targeting the main branch. For some reason, that didn't work earlier today. I'm hoping it's a GitHub issue, temporary, because I simply cannot figure out how to fix it. It looks the same to me as my other projects. So we have one job in this GitHub Actions workflow. It's called build. This could be named whatever. It's using Ubuntu. It checks out our source code using Git in this checkout action. It installs Node version 12 and NPM and even Yarn. Then it uses NPM to install PNPM, because that's a lot faster for resolving, downloading, and storing dependencies. In fact, we saw that it installed 1,200 NPM packages in 19 seconds, which is so impressive. So after PNPM install, then we can finally get to what matters, the build, the production build of our Angular elements. And let's just recap here, if I can find. This is the repo, LazyDK Angular Elements Experiments. And the latest run action is this one. It ran in about just a minute and 1 second, or 50 seconds inside of this build job. And we can see here in the PNPM build step that we got this 74 kilobytes uncompressed chunk for our very first Angular elements, which is using the hacked create custom element function to bootstrap an Angular element without as much as a single Angular module, the way it's meant to be. I'm sure we'll have more fun with this. But anyways, what we want now is, this is running version 11 of Angular. Now we want to run it across versions of Angular. And for this, we're going to be using, see if I can find it here. Well, let's try to find it on the GitHub Marketplace. Let's search for Angular. And what I'm looking for is actually here. Look for NG Worker, our free and open source software organization. And the name is not very good. And it doesn't match the package name, the repo name. But this is it. The match Angular versions. It's called on the GitHub Marketplace. It's a GitHub action. Latest version is version 3 point something. But we can actually see all the different version tags here. So if you press this button, well, what actually happens? I can't really remember. Oh, it's showing you what to copy in. That's actually pretty nice. Let's do that. And where should we do this? We should do it before installing our dependencies. Let's do it here, right after node. Setting up the environment, match Angular versions. Yeah, you know what? I don't really want a name. I'll just show the name of the action here, which is NG Worker Angular versions action. We're currently at version 3, but one of the community members, Shihab, has reported an issue, a bug report today, and we have a plan to fix it, but it'll require a breaking change. So version 4 is on its way, and another feature that's coming up is support for NX workspaces. Currently, it's only supporting Angular CLI workspaces, but it's also on the roadmap and being worked on. So lots of nice stuff going on, and feel free to join in. It's an open source project. File issues or feature reports or ideas, and we'll be very happy to get back to you with feedback on that. So current version is version 3. Whenever a feature version is published, you'll get that automatically if you're at version 3. So yeah, that's what we'll be using now. So it takes a parameter, just like the Node version. We have a parameter, and it's called Angular version. And here we could specify, currently on version 11.2. So we could say, I want to run it as Angular 11.1.x or 11.0.x or 10.0.x or even 6.0.x. That's the lowest supported version. Every way from 6 to 11.2 currently. And as soon as the version 12 release candidate comes out, we'll be looking into adding support for that to this action. But this is still only testing a single version. So how would we test multiple versions? Because we could do it like this and say we want to test in these 2 versions, or every 11.x version, like this. But this is not how it works, because it takes only a single value here, right? Yeah, it does. So this will still be only one job being run. So one job can only so we could actually, technically, we could switch versions later in the same job and run npm install or pm install again. But what we actually want to do is use what's called, in GitHub Actions, it's called a matrix configuration. And it looks like this. I think we can add it wherever we want after the steps, before, but I'll put it here. It's called strategy, this setting, and then matrix. And this is a set of parameters. So let's call this parameter Angular version. And here we can pass in all the 11 versions of Angular if we want. And then that actually does so that this job, the build job, will be run for 1, 2, 3 times in GitHub Actions. We'll see that in a minute. And for each run of this job, the build job, there will be one of these values will be passed as a parameter, and we'll use it like looks like this on GitHub Actions. And you might have seen something similar in, for example, Azure pipelines or GitLab CI or whatever you're using. So here we have access to a matrix object, and there's even autocomplete here, the Angular version parameter. Very nice. So in the first run of this job, it will be 11.0.x. That will be passed to the Angular version parameter to the ng worker Angular versions action. And the Angular versions action will then go into the package.json file inside of this job in isolation. So it's not changing our source code. At least it's not committing to the Git repo. It could do that if we enable that in a step in this GitHub workflow, but that's not what it's doing. It's just for the purpose of this build. It's changing all the versions of these dependencies in the package.json, and that when we're then running npm install down here, now we'll have version 11.0 and the TypeScript version that goes with that, and all the other, there's like 15, 20 different dependencies being managed by this action. In fact, let's look at and find Angular compatibility matrix. It's at gist on GitHub that I'm maintaining. I've been maintaining it for years. And because when you're working across many projects, or you have many toy projects in your GitHub profile, whatever, like you need to figure out which version of Node and which version of TypeScript is supported. You have to switch that. And if we look down here, now we're running across these three versions of Angular. The first column is Angular CLI. Second one is Angular. Then comes Node.js and TypeScript. So we can see here that version 12 of Node.js is fine. And it can run on either version 4 of TypeScript or 4.1 in the case of 11.1.x and 11.2.x. And as we go further down the versions, there's many more, but only a few per version of Angular, only a few versions of TypeScript supported. Specific versions of Angular CLI, specific versions of Node.js. As we can see here, the Node.js versions are also, they have also been changing a lot over time. And same with TypeScript. Like it started with 2.0, and now we have 4.2 support for TypeScript. And please note again that each or every version of TypeScript has breaking changes. It doesn't follow semantic versioning. It's more like the typical Microsoft market-driven versioning. Whenever we feel like it, whenever we need a major release, we'll release one. Like there's nothing more significant in 4.0 than between 3.8 and 3.9. It's just another release. I guess they figured we're at 3.9. Should we make 4.0? Yeah, why not? So that's TypeScript. Be aware. Be aware. Like even when Angular goes and switches from 11.0 to 11.1, and you upgrade your TypeScript, there might be breaking changes and backwards incompatible changes in TypeScript. So be aware of that. Every TypeScript version comes with breaking changes. They're all mentioned in, there's usually one blog post per version of TypeScript. So look carefully into that, because Angular won't help you at all with this migration for TypeScript. Okay, so you can find this on my GitHub gist profile. It was just to show you like how much of a mess it is to figure out all these versions of Angular. But that's one of the things that this action takes care of. TypeScript and all the related dependencies for Angular, all the many Angular packages. So this should actually be it. Let's try to run these 11.012 versions of Angular first. This should give us 3 jobs being run on a commit. And because of the problems earlier today, I'm not going to do a pull request. I'm just going to be pushing straight to the main branch, which is terrible, I know. But I don't want to be struggling with GitHub again right now. Okay, add Angular 11.y versions. I'll push this. It's synchronizing with GitHub, and we should be good. Yeah, this is the action again, and it's documentation. Let's go and see if there's a new action. Actually, we should see one workflow run, but it should have 3 job runs inside of it. They are all here. And by default, GitHub has in a matrix of one job, it has the fail fast configuration, which means that if one of them fails, the rest will cancel as soon as possible. So obviously at least one of them failed. So let's see what's going on. Oh, okay. So PNPM wants us to add a parameter so that it doesn't expect a frozen log file, because we're changing the dependencies so that the log file will not reflect those versions. So let me see, try to figure out. In Lumberjack, we're not using PNPM, but I'll look into our NX worker repo where we are using NX and PNPM. We're not using this Angular versions action yet. We want to do that for, well, not for NX worker, but yeah, we should have stumbled upon this problem of PNPM and log files. So let me just look into that. Yeah, okay. There's a couple of parameters that we should pass to PNPM. It's these two. Frozen log file false. This will be true by default, which means that it expects this PNPM log file to match whatever's in package.json. But since we're changing package.json dependencies inside of that workflow, this won't be the case. And verify store integrity. You can read more about it on PNPM. That has to do with this PNPM store, which is the global cache for PNPM. But we can skip this as part of our CI. There's one more here. This parameter we could pass as well. This will remove all the log outputs, or most of them, from PNPM, which is, no, let's just leave them on for now, because it's really neat to look at PNPM, especially for the first times. Okay, so CI fix PNPM install. Push it. And let's look at that super fast GitHub Actions. It'll be done in a minute or so, so let's hurry up. Oh, it's queued right now. Okay, let's go in here. And we can look into either of these jobs. Let's look at this one. It's running PNPM install. And it's resolving all the dependencies. And it didn't have any of them in the PNPM store. So it's downloading all of them. We can cache this between the runs, but it's because we're getting a new, fresh CI host or virtual machine every time, or being recreated from an image. So it doesn't know of these dependencies, even though it installed it a few minutes ago. So to fix that, you'd have to cache the PNPM store, or your yarn cache folder, or the equivalent npm cache. And you can do that, but let's not spend time doing that right now. Okay, so the 11.2 build, it actually succeeded. So let's see here, 74.47 kilobytes uncompressed. 11.1 also succeeded, 74.90 kilobytes. All right. And 11.0, exactly the same. So what was that? That was a small decrease of like half a kilobyte, or 43. So, yeah, sorry, 430 bytes or something like that, right? Yeah. So even across these minor versions, there's a change. So it'll be interesting to track these changes across many versions of Angular. And in fact, Angular Elements was introduced all the way back in Angular 6.0. So could be interesting to go all the way back to that with this workflow, because we might also see if there's any limitations of the Angular versions action. And of course, that could help us improve that action by filing an issue at the repo. But more importantly, we need to figure out a way of tracking these metrics, like putting it in a file in the repo and auto-updating it or something like that. I don't really have any great ideas for this. So yeah, maybe send me a tweet if you have an idea for this, because I'm still thinking about what would be a good approach. We need to output this value, so maybe we should just put it in a file, a table in a Markdown file, or what do you think? Anyways, so this was actually a success. Let's see, just for funsies, if we can add all the way from 9 to 10 and 11. And well, we should actually also be able to do it like so. And this would give us a nicer diff between commits. So let's first say that this is a stylistic change, because we're just formatting. And let me, yeah, you know what? Let me double check that this format is also in fact working, because I'm YAML is not my expertise. Let's see what's happening on GitHub. Another action should be running, and it should be succeeding again. We can expand this here. Did I click it? Yeah. And now in about a minute or so, they should all complete again. Oh, and we already see that they are in fact being run. This is the matrix parameter for this job run of the build job. So here we see it's passing the 11.0.x parameter, which we're then using for the Angular versions action, and the same for the others, but with different parameters. You can do a lot of interesting stuff with this, and like this is the reason we built this action, was to verify the Lumberjack logging library across many versions of Angular. Because Lumberjack version 2.x has support for 9.0 up until including 11.2, and as soon as a release candidate comes out, we're testing it straight away to see that we have compatibility. Okay, so this was a success again, which means we can use this format. So we can have 10.0.x, we can have 10.1.x, and are there any more 10 versions? I think there's a 10.2 as well. Maybe we should check this compatibility table. Compatibility. 10.0, 10.1, 10.2. And with 9, we have 9.0 and 9.1. Let's add those as well. 9.0, 9.1, there's no 9.2. Okay. CI, add Angular 9.x.y and 10.x.y. Push it to GitHub. And look how little effort this is to be testing a library, or in this case, an application across versions of Angular. There's many use cases for this, come to think of it. So And another use case for this matrix strategy configuration is, what if we said IV enabled, true, false? Then we just need a step down here somewhere that goes and toggles the IV or enable IV setting in the configurations, TypeScript compilation, compiler options. So you could do that as well to also check for view engine and IV support. Of course, it becomes a little trickier when, like, for example, if we added 7.0, it doesn't have IV at all. In that case, I don't remember just straight from the top of my mind, but there is a GitHub Actions configuration to say in version 7 you should have IV enabled false. But even that, Angular will probably complain because enable IV might not even be a configuration option when we go that far back. So instead we would have to make a condition somewhere down here on a run or some step. We can say if version is not 7.0.x or something like that. Yeah, so a few different things you can do here with these techniques. Trying to roll back, change. Let's go look at the action. Latest one. Oh, so now something failed already. And since we have fail fast, it just canceled the others. So seems like it was version 9.0 that has an issue. Oh, hey Nacho, thank you for joining. So what happened here? Interesting, right? tsconfig JSON argument for module option must be none, CommonJS, AMD, system, UMD, ES6, ES 2015, or ES next. And we have module ES 2020. So I seem to remember that Angular used to have ES next. But let's search for this one and switch it on to ES next instead and see if that's compatible across all the versions. Because if it's not, then we need one of those if statements in our GitHub workflow that sets this module parameter based on what is the version of Angular. So let's see if we can fix this. First, we'll search for this configuration. It's in the root tsconfig, and the module code being generated is ES 2020. We'll say ES next because ES 2020 didn't exist back in Angular 9.0. So that would be TypeScript 3.7 or 3.6. So this was not even a known setting back then because it didn't exist at the time. So ES next will mean the latest supported ECMAScript version by whatever TypeScript version is currently being used. Okay, so let's see. CI use compatible, or is it a char? Maybe use compatible module setting, TypeScript setting. And the nice thing is that we'll know within a minute or so whether it worked. Hey there, Angular After Dark. Is it this one? Yeah, it's queued. It will be running in a second. And notice right here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 versions of this build job is now being run. And we're only dealing with Angular 9, 10, and 11. So that would be pretty impressive to get this Angular Elements application, or yeah, it is actually just an element that can be put into whatever application. So it is a real web component, and it didn't require a single Angular module. It's the future of Angular, right? Unfortunately, I'm the only one seeing that. Yeah. Oh, we're seeing some successes here. That's nice. That's not. Oh, yeah. 9.0. You made it. Everything is green. Good to go. What a night. Okay, let's just quickly look through the bundle size here manually, and we'll figure out a way to automate this. Again, I'm looking for tips. If you can have an idea on how we can like output. Whoa, that's a lot of Webpack progress. There must be a way to turn that off as well. I've never seen that. Strange. Wow. Okay. Oh, interesting. Interesting. 9.0.x was actually dramatically smaller, or at least a little smaller than the latest 11 versions of Angular using Angular elements. Oops, Angular, that's not good. That's not good at all. There's one caveat here, because I'm just remembering that we're actually using the NGX build plus. We're using it for serve, but we're also using it for the build, right? And this one is always 11.0. So we'll actually, and this one is not being managed by Angular versions action, at least not currently. Like, it's something to consider. But for now, we're only supporting like whatever is bundled with Angular by default. And yeah, looking into NX as well. So we'll actually have to replace this ourselves in our CI workflow, because this is something that's specific to our workspace. And the reason for using NGX Build Plus was this single bundle, this option. That's the reason we're using NGX Build Plus here, because we want this single bundle for the web component. So there's one caveat here. We're going to have to figure out how to change the version of NGX Build Plus in our CI workflow. And I have some ideas for that. So before we declare Angular a failure for regressing or having regressions on the bundle size of Angular elements with exactly the same source code, let's make sure that it's not NGX Build Plus messing things up. So that's it for today, the second episode. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something. Tweet at me if you have ideas for how we can store these metrics somewhere. We're going to gzip them, and then we need to store it per version of Angular. So any ideas about that, and I would be happy to get that feedback. That was it for today. You have a very nice end of the week. See you.